Hello. Hello, Julie. Hello, hello. Hey, Palm. Hello, Beverly Bright. Got the hiccups. Hey, it's just me. Hey, love. Hello, Kimmy. Hey, Boss Man. Hey, Peanut. Hey, Magic Moon. Hello, Shirley. Welcome in. Hello, Bobby Johnson. Hello, Tracy. Hello, Judy Still. Hey, Bobby. Hey, Pamela. Hello, hello. Hey, Bling Queen. Be safe. Welcome in. Tonight is Cryptid Night. Creatures. Okay, Tracy. Thank you. Hey, Anna. I'll be right back. Hello, Sandra. Hey, Martha. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Pastelina. Hello, Mia. Hello, Melanie. Hello, Helen at the Moon. Hey, XJ. Thank you, X. Hello, Marine's daughter. Hello, hello. Hello, Andrew. Awesome, Marine's daughter. So good to see you here. Ooh, I like that blue on YouTube. That's pretty. I like that. Who's ready for the Loch Ness Monster? Hello, Martha. The dolls have been getting closer. Yes, they have, Magic. Hey, little Tito. Hey, Zoe Ann. Hey, Tara. Howdy, howdy, come on in. I have always liked the Loch Ness Monster. Hello, Chariot of Fire. Missed you and Marine's daughter so much. Andrew, is this your first time here? And if so, do you like scary stories? Scotland is on your list? Oh yeah, mine too. Oh, really, Andrew? You'll have to share one day. Five minutes. Let's start sharing the live. 5 friends, 10 friends. How many friends you got on TikTok that like scary stories? Bring them on over. How's the music? Des, thank you for reposting. Thank you for sharing the live. I am loving the blue and the red. What about your night dwellers? Awesome. Oh, I can imagine, Andrew. Tampa? Hey guys, why don't you shout out where you're from? You might be surprised. You might have a neighbor or someone that lives in your state. Mary Catherine. South Carolina. Really? That's awesome. Montana, Shauna, Melanie, Mississippi, Gulf Coast. Texas, Virginia, New Orleans. Look at this. Hello, Carolyn. Thank you for the follow. Carolyn, do you like scary stories? Michigan, West Virginia. Minnesota, South Carolina. You are most welcome, Andrew. We love having you here. Alabama. High Point, North Carolina. Not too far away from me. Hello, Curly Bear. How are you? Florida. Nice. Northern Virginia. Pink, you're from Virginia. I didn't know that. Texas, Michigan. I hope not, Magic. 2 minutes. Florida in the house. Hello, Suppression Squad. I think she moves. She doesn't like to be in the background. Vincent, your birthday is coming up soon. Well, happy early birthday. There was a lot of Texans hanging in there, Suppression Squad. How about you? Thank you for the FYP, Andrew. Hello, Siamese. Hey, Amber. Look at my night dwellers coming in. Hello, Nikki. And I appreciate that, Suppression Squad. I love seeing you come in the live. Hey, Anna. Oh, of course you did, Magic Moon. Hello, Patricia. Popcorn time. Get ready for your story. Can you hear the music? Oh, thank you, Julie. Thank you for plugging that. So I have created a new page that is only for scary stories, horror-loving people. And it is Whispers in the Dark. And I will be posting scary stories there as well at 10 p.m. each night. Well, depending on when the show is over here, then I'll be posting it. But please follow. I'm going to be very particular about who I follow. If you don't like scary stories or horror, don't bother. But if you do, come follow me. Thank you for sharing the live. Lisa Stan, hello. Take a seat, Suppression Squad. You know you like it. Welcome to Twisted Tales Live. I am your host, Bryn Morgan. I'm a horror author. I'm also a teller and a lover of every category of scary story you can think of. This is the Night Room. I am the Night Queen. You are my night dwellers. If you like scary stories, consider hitting that follow button and the notification bell and never missing another Twisted Tales Live. Are you ready for story time? Oh, we already hit that live goal? I had no idea. Hold on just one moment. Thank you so much, everyone. This is a safe, warm, loving, welcoming family. We've worked hard to create it, and we're going to keep it. If you want a family that loves scary stories and has ended up being great friends, consider joining. The only thing we don't like in my life is, well, we like vampires. We just don't like energy vampires. You know the kind. They come in, they suck the life out of the room. No, that will not do here. I want you to sit back for the next couple of hours and listen to a story. I want you to think back to when you were a child, when mom, dad, grandpa or grandma used to read you a story before you closed your eyes and drifted off to Betty Byland. Well, that's kind of how it is here. Only it's scary stories. And they're not for children. Other than that, enjoy. What? Okay. We have a way of how we go into story time here. If you are brand new, Join along. Lower your lights. Lock your doors. Light a candle for ambiance. But we all know it's to chase the shadows away. Pull your curtains nice and tight. Wrap yourself in your warmest blanket to avoid the chills that are about to crawl up your spine. And let's begin with the Loch Ness Monster. Thank you, thank you. Oh, the little birds are adorable. Tonight, I bring you the real story behind Scotland's greatest mystery. Something about the Loch Ness Monster has always intrigued me. I've seen movies, I've seen documentaries, I've read books, but I wanted to tell the story for you tonight, since it is Creature Tuesday. Let's begin with the beast of Loch Ness. Chapter 1. The Ancient Terror. Some legends are born from truth too terrifying to forget. Deep in the Scottish Highlands, surrounded by mist-covered mountains and ancient stone circles, lies a body of water that has harbored dark secrets for over 1,500 years. Loch Ness, 22.5 miles long. Did you know that? I didn't. 1.5 miles wide, 812 feet deep at its darkest point. The largest freshwater lake in the United Kingdom, holding more water than all the lakes in England and Wales, my hometown, combined. But it's not the size that makes the lake famous. No. It's what lives beneath its dark waters. Picture Scotland in the year 565 AD. This is a land of warring tribes, ancient magic, and Celtic mysteries that stretch back into the mist of time. Christianity is just beginning to take hold, but the old gods still whisper in the wind, and monsters still roam the wild places. Into the landscape comes a man who will change history. Not just religious history, but the history of one of the world's greatest mysteries. His name is Saint Columba, an Irish monk, a missionary, a scholar, and the first person to ever record an encounter with the creature that would one day be known as the Loch Ness Monster. Columba was no ordinary priest. That's what you should know. He was a man of noble blood, a great-great-grandson of an Irish king, educated in the finest monasteries of his time. He had come to Scotland not just to spread Christianity, but to convert the fierce Pictish tribes who still practiced the old ways. The Picts, warriors who painted themselves blue for battle, who carved mysterious symbols into stone, and who told stories around their fires about creatures that lived in the deep waters of their sacred lochs. Even before Columbus' arrival, the Picts had been etching images into rocks near Loch Ness, a snake-looking thing. Images of a strange beast with flippers and a very long neck and intelligent eyes that seemed to watch from the shadows. On August the 22nd, 565 AD, St. Columba was traveling with his companions along the banks of the river Ness, which flows out of the Great Loch. They were making their way through Pictish territory, and the locals had been less than welcoming to these foreign missionaries. But as they approached the riverbank, Columba and his men came upon a scene that stopped them cold. A group of Picts were gathered around something on the shore, their faces grave, their voices low with fear. They were burying a man who had been torn apart by something in the water. The Picts explained what had happened, speaking in hushed, terrified whispers. The man had been swimming in the river when something had attacked him from beneath. Something massive, something with jaws, powerful enough to crush human bones and claws that could tear flesh from the bone. They had tried to rescue him, rowing out in their boats with hooks and ropes, but it was too late. This creature had already claimed its victim and disappeared back into the dark, murky depths. The locals called it a water beast, but their description was of something far more specific and far more terrifying than any ordinary animal. This was no chance encounter. The creature had been hunting these waters for generations, claiming victims whenever humans dared to enter its domain. The Picts knew its patterns, knew its hunger, knew that it was only a matter of time before it struck again. And they were right. Because as St. Columba and his men stood on that riverbank, looking down at the fresh grave of the water's beast's latest victim, they had no idea that they were about to come face to face with the monster that had been waiting in those dark waters since the world was young. 565 AD. This legend of the Loch Ness is over 1,400 years old. Drop a scary emoji if you had no idea it went back that far. I certainly didn't. The Picts were carving images of this creature into rocks. ancient evidence. Something massive with jaws that could crush human bones. Comment if you're getting chills. Because St. Columba was about to do something that no one expected. He was going to send one of his men directly into the creature's domain. Thank you. Chapter 2, The Saint and the Monster. Faith and terror collided on the dark waters of ancient Scotland. St. Columba stood on the banks of the River Ness, looking across the dark water to the far shore, where a small boat sat moored and waiting. He needed that boat to continue his journey. But between him and his destination lies something that had just unalived a man. The Pictish locals gathered around him, shocked and shook their heads and muttered warnings in their ancient language, which he could not understand. The water beast was still out there, still hungry, still waiting for the next victim to enter its domain. Any reasonable person would have found another way across. Any sensible leader would have turned back, sought a different route, waited for a safer time to cross. But St. Columba was neither reasonable nor sensible. He was a man of faith, and faith sometimes demanded that actions that looked like madness to the outside world. So this is what he did. Loch Ness, he called to one of his companions, a young monk who had followed him from Ireland with unwavering devotion. I need you to swim across that river and bring back that boat. The silence that followed was deafening. The Picts stared at him in shock, as if he was insane. Even Columba's own men looked at their leader as if he had lost his mind. The river where a man had just been unalived by a monster. Swim across? Bring back the boat? Loch Ness was a faithful man, but he wasn't stupid. He knew what lived in those waters. He had just seen the torn and mangled remains of what the creature could do to human flesh. But when your saint asks you to face a monster, what do you do? When your spiritual leader sends you into the jaws of death, how do you respond? Loch Ness looked at the dark water, and then Columba, then back at the water again. Without saying a word, he began to remove his clothes. The watching Picts tribe began to murmur prayers to their old gods, making protective signs with their hands. Even they, who had lived with this terror for generations, couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Loch Ness waited and then began to walk toward the river. He waded into the River Ness, the cold water lapping at his ankles, then his knees, then his waist. Behind him on the shore, dozens of people held their breath, waiting for the inevitable. And then he began to swim. For a few moments, nothing happened. Loch made steady progress across the river, his strokes cutting through the dark water, his breath steady and controlled. But then, the water around him began to change, began to swirl and twirl, the waves getting bigger and bigger. First, there were ripples, not the natural ripples created by a swimming man, but something else. Something moving beneath the surface, something big, something that displaced water in a way that spoke of immense size and power. The pigs on the shore began to cry out in their native language for him to get out of the water, pointing at the water, shouting warnings that needed no translation. And then it surfaced. What emerged from the River Ness that day defied every natural law, every rational explanation, every comfortable assumption about what kind of creatures could exist in the world. It was massive, larger than any living thing the witnesses had ever seen in fresh water. Its neck rose from the depths like the mast of a sunken ship, water cascading from the hide as it lifted itself higher and higher above the surface. Its eyes were ancient and intelligent, filled with a hunger that went beyond mere appetite. This was a predator that had been perfecting its craft for centuries, a creature that knew the taste of human fear as well as human flesh. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth designed not just for killing, but for tearing, for shredding, for reducing living creatures to manageable pieces. And it was heading directly for Lugni McComan, with the speed and purpose of a force of nature. The young monk swimming alone in the middle of the river turned and saw death approaching him. But instead of panic, instead of screaming, instead of the desperate thrashing that the creature had come to expect from its human prey, Lugni simply continued swimming. He had faith in his leader. He had faith in his God. And he had faith that somehow, some way, St. Columba would not let him die alone in these deep waters. Lugni had to swim toward a monster because his saint told him to. Ultimate faith or insanity? Let me know in the comments. The creature was larger than any living thing they'd seen in fresh water. Drop a wave if you're picturing this. Teeth designed for tearing and shredding. Oh, night dwellers, this is nightmare fuel. And at that moment, with death closing in on his faithful follower, St. Columba did something that witnesses would remember for the rest of their lives. Chapter 3. The Power of the Cross. In the darkest moment, when all hope seems lost, sometimes miracles choose to reveal themselves. The water beast was no more than a spear's length away from Loch when St. Columba stepped to the very edge of the riverbank. Every person watching knew they were about to witness a man's death. The Picts had seen this creature kill before. They knew its speed, its power, its absolute certainty when it came to claiming its prey. But Columba raised his hand high above his head, and in a gesture there was confidence that seemed to defy the natural order of things, he yelled out, "You will go no further!" His voice carried across the water with supernatural ability and authority, cutting through the panic and fear like a blade through silk. "Do not touch the man! Leave at once!" He made the sign of the cross, that simple gesture that has become the symbol of new faith spreading across the Celtic lands, and something impossible happened. The creature stopped, not slowed down, not hesitated, stopped completely, as if it had suddenly hit an invisible wall in the middle of the river. Its ancient eyes, serpent-like, which had been fixed on Loch with predatory focus, suddenly shifted to St. Columba. And in that gaze was something that witnesses would struggle to describe for the rest of their lives. It was fear. This creature that had terrorized the waters of Loch Ness and the river Ness for generations. The monster that had claimed countless victims without ever showing mercy or hesitation was afraid. Not just startled, not just surprised, afraid. "In the name of God Almighty," Columba continued, his voice never wavering, "I command you to return to the depths and trouble these waters no more." What happened next, according to every witness present that day, defied every law of nature they understood. The creature, this massive, powerful predator that could have easily destroyed any human who dared to oppose it, began to retreat beneath the water. It sank slowly back into the water until its head was immersed. It fled. St. Columba's biographer, writing about the event a century later, described it this way: "The monster moved more quickly than if it had been pulled back with ropes." Imagine that scene. A creature the size of a small ship, moving through the water faster than the multiple teams of strong men could have dragged it. Desperate to escape the presence of one Irish monk standing on a riverbank. Lugny McCuman, who had been swimming for his life moments before, found himself alone in suddenly calm water. The creature had vanished so completely, it was as if it had never existed at all. But the displaced water was still rocking back and forth, and the memory of those ancient, intelligent serpent eyes were burned into the minds of everyone present. Lugny completed his swim, retrieved the boat, and returned to the shore where St. Columba and the others waited. But the real transformation had taken place among the Picts, who had witnessed this impossible confrontation. These were people who lived in fear of the water beast for generations. It was part of their mythology, their nightmares, their daily reality. They had seen friends and family members torn apart limb by limb by this creature, had heard its roars echoing across the water on dark nights, had arranged their entire lives around avoiding its hunting grounds. And they had just watched a foreign priest commanded to leave and watched it obey. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Here was proof that this new God, this Christ that Columba preached about, had power over the ancient terrors that had ruled their world. Many of the Picts converted to Christianity that day, not because of theological arguments or missionary pressure, but because they had witnessed divine power triumph over primordial evil. But here's what's truly chilling about this story. Saint Columba didn't destroy the creature. He didn't banish it to another realm or remove it from the world entirely. He simply commanded it to return to the depths. That's right. Return to the depths, to wait, to hide, to remain in those dark waters until what exactly? Until the power of the cross was no longer present to keep it at bay. The creature was still there, night dwellers, somewhere in the vast depths of Loch Ness, still ancient, still hungry, still waiting. And for the next 1,400 years, it would occasionally surface to remind the world that some legends are born from encounters too terrifying to forget. The monster obeyed the sign of the cross. Drop a cross, if this gives you chills. It bled more quickly than it pulled back with ropes. The fear was real. He didn't destroy it, just sent it back to the depths to wait. That is a terrifying thought. And for over 1,000 years, the creature waited in the darkness. But in 1933, something changed, and the beast of Loch Ness decided it was time to return to the surface. Chapter 4, The Awakening. After centuries of silence, legends have a way of reminding us that we feared them in the first place. For over 13 centuries, the creature slept or waited. Or perhaps it was simply biding its time, watching from the darkest parts, the deepest parts of Loch Ness, as the world above changed beyond recognition. The Scotland of St. Columba gave way to medieval kingdoms, then to union with England, then to the modern industrial age. Steamships began to traverse the loch. Roads were carved along its shores. The old ways were forgotten, and the ancient warnings became nothing more than quaint folklore. By 1933, most people had never heard of St. Columba's encounter with the Water Beast. The pictured stone carvings were curiosities studied by archaeologists. Scotland had become a destination for tourists seeking picturesque Highland scenery, not primal terror. But the creature remembered everything. The year 1933 was significant for more reasons than anyone realized at this time. A new road had just been completed along the northern shore of Loch Ness. The A82, giving motorists their first clear, unobstructed view of the entire length of the loch. For the first time in history, hundreds of people each day were driving along the lake shore, their eyes automatically drawn to that vast expanse of dark water stretching away toward the mountains. And something in those deep, dark, murky depths was finally ready to be seen again. On April the 15th, 1933, a woman named Aldie McKay was driving along the newly completed A82 with her husband John. It was a beautiful spring day, the kind of crisp Highland morning that makes you understand why people fall in love with Scotland. Aldie was enjoying the view when something in the loch caught her attention. At first, she thought it might be a boat in distress, or perhaps debris from a recent storm. But as she watched, the object began to move in ways that boats simply don't move. "John," she said to her husband, pointing toward the water, "what is that?" John McKay pulled the car over to the side of the road, and both of them stared out at Loch Ness in growing amazement and terror. What they saw would change their lives forever and launch one of the greatest mysteries of the modern age. In the water, perhaps 200 yards from shore, something enormous was rolling and plunging through the surface. Its body, according to Aldie's later testimony, resembled that of a whale, but it moved with a purpose and an intelligence that no whale has ever displayed. The water around it was cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron, and the creature's movement sent waves crashing against the shoreline with enough force to be heard from their position on the road. For a full minute, 60 long seconds, the creature remained visible, performing what could only be described as some kind of aquatic display, rolling, diving, surfacing again, as if it were deliberately showing itself to these new observers. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. Not gradually, not sinking slowly out of sight, but disappearing instantly in a boiling mass of foam that left the Mackays staring at empty water and wondering if they had just imagined the entire encounter. The Mackays drove home in stunned silence, each trying to process what they had just witnessed. This wasn't folklore anymore. This wasn't an ancient legend or a saint's miracle from the Dark Ages. This was 1933. They were modern people living in a modern age of automobiles and radio broadcast and electric lights. And they had just seen something that shouldn't exist. But the story doesn't end with the Mackays' silent confusion, because working at Loch Ness at that time was a man named Alex Campbell, a water bailiff for the Loch and part-time journalist for the Inverness Courier. Campbell had heard whispers of strange sightings before, local rumors that were usually dismissed as too much whiskey or too much imagination. But when he interviewed the Mackays about their experience, something about their story convinced him that this was different. These weren't drunken fishermen spinning tall tales. These were respectable people, shaken by what they had seen, reluctant to even discuss it for fear of being ridiculed. And on May the 2nd, 1933, Alex Campbell published an article in the Inverness Courier with the headline, "Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness." And in that article, for the first time in modern history, he used a word that would become forever associated with the dark waters of the Scottish Highlands. Monster. The Loch Ness Monster. The article was picked up by newspapers across Britain, then across the world. Letters poured into the Inverness Courier from people claiming their own sightings. Encounters that had been dismissed or forgotten suddenly seemed significant again. And in the deep waters of Loch Ness, something ancient stirred with what might have been satisfaction. After 13 centuries of patience, the beast was ready to reclaim its place in the nightmares of humanity. 1933, the year that everything changed for the Loch Ness. The creature was ready to be seen again. Water churning like a simmering cauldron. For that to happen, the Mackays must have saw something massive. The word monster was used for the first time in 1933. History in the making. But the Mackays' sighting was just the beginning, because within months, someone would capture the first photograph of something that would change forever everything we thought we knew about what was possible. Chapter 5, the first photograph. Sometimes a single image, just one, can transform legend into what feels like reality. The summer of 1933 was unlike any other in the history of Loch Ness. Word of the Mackay's sighting had spread across Scotland and beyond, drawing curious visitors, journalists, and skeptics to the Highland shores. But seeing something and proving something are two very different challenges. In 1933, people still believed that photographs represented absolute truth, that the camera could not lie, could not be deceived, could not capture anything that wasn't really there. So when Hugh Gray walked across the shores of Loch Ness on the morning of Sunday, November the 12th, 1933, he carried with him a bulky Kodak box camera, just in case. Hugh Gray was not a monster hunter or a sensation seeker. He was a respectable member of his community, a man who attended church every Sunday morning and then took a peaceful walk along the Loch to clear his head and enjoy the Highland scenery. On this particular Sunday, the weather was clear and bright, perfect for photography. Gray had his camera with him because he enjoyed taking pictures of the landscape, the wildlife, the play of light on water. They made Loch Ness so beautiful. He had no expectation of seeing anything unusual that morning. The monster sightings of recent months seemed like decent newspaper stories that were decent and distant now. Not something that would intrude on his quiet Sunday routine. But as Gray walked along the shore near the village of Foyers, something caught his eye. Out in the loch, perhaps 300 yards from where he stood, the water was beginning to churn and bubble in a way that seemed unnatural. And then something broke the surface. Gray would later describe it as an object of considerable dimensions that emerged from the water with a sound like a small whale breathing. But what he saw defied easy description. There was a long, thick body that seemed to undulate as it moved. What might have been a tail thrashing back and forth with enough force to send waves racing toward the shore. And rising from the mass was something that looked like a neck, impossibly long, impossibly thick, supporting what could only be described as a head. Gray fumbled for his camera, his hand shaking with excitement and disbelief. He managed to take 5 photographs before the creature sank back beneath the surface, leaving only disturbed water and the memory of something that challenged every assumption about what kinds of life could exist in a Scottish loch. Of the 5 photographs Gray took that morning, only one showed anything when the film was developed. But that single image would become the first alleged photograph of the Loch Ness monster. Grainy, unclear, but showing what appeared to be indeed a large object in the water with appendages that looked disturbingly like flippers or fins. The photograph was published in the Scottish Daily Record on December the 6th, 1933, with the headline, The Monster of Loch Ness. First photograph. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Here was visual evidence, not just eyewitness testimony that could be dismissed as imagination or wishful thinking, but actual photographic proof that something extraordinary existed in Loch Ness. Skeptics argued that the image was too unclear to prove anything, that it could be driftwood or debris or some kind of optical illusion. But believers saw validation of what they had been claiming for months, that the loch harbored a creature unlike anything known to modern science. But Gray's photograph was just the opening act. The real sensation was still to come. The success of the first monster photograph had attracted the attention of London's Daily Mail, one of Britain's most influential newspapers. Looking for a story that would capture the public's imagination, the Daily Mail decided to send their own team to Loch Ness. And leading that team was a man named Marmaduke Wetherell, a professional big game hunter with experience tracking dangerous animals in Africa and India. If anyone at all could find definitive proof of the Loch Ness Monster, surely it would be someone with Wetherell's expertise and reputation. The Daily Mail announced their expedition with great fanfare. Monster hunt at Loch Ness, famous hunter to track the beast. Wetherell arrived at Loch Ness in December 1933, confident that his skills would quickly solve the mystery, one way or the other. He set up camp on the shores of the loch and began systematically searching for physical evidence of the creature's existence. And amazingly, he found it. On the morning of December the 21st, 1933, Wetherell discovered a line of enormous footprints. Yes, you heard me right. Footprints leading from the loch up onto the shore. The prints were unlike anything he had seen in all his years of hunting. Circular, about 8 inches long, with what appeared to be claw marks at the edges. Here was physical proof that something large and unknown was emerging from Loch Ness onto dry land. Wetherell made plaster casts of the best prints and sent them to London's Natural History Museum for expert analysis. The Daily Mail prepared to announce the greatest zoological discovery of the century. But when the museum's experts examined the cast, they made a discovery that would change everything about the Loch Ness story. They claimed that the footprints were fake. Not just mistaken or misidentified, deliberately fabricated, using a dried hippopotamus foot that had been mounted as an umbrella stand, the kind of exotic trophy that was popular in wealthy British homes of the era. Needless to say, the revelation was devastating. Wetherell's reputation was destroyed. The Daily Mail was humiliated, and the entire Loch Ness Monster phenomenon seemed to collapse into ridicule and scandal. But Marmaduke Wetherell was not a man who accepted humiliation gracefully, and his response to being exposed as either a fraud or a fool would lead to the creation of the most famous monster photograph in history. A photograph that would fool the world for 60 years. I'm sure you know the photograph that I'm talking about. Hugh Gray got the first photo on a quiet Sunday walk. Sometimes legends find you. Only 1 out of 5 photos showed anything, but that one changed history. Fake hippo footprints. The humiliation was about to create something so much bigger. Because Marmaduke Wetherell's revenge against the Daily Mail would produce an image so convincing, so perfectly crafted, that it would become the defining proof of Nessie's existence for over half a century. Let's take an intermission. 10 minutes. When I come back, we will continue the story of Nessie, the Loch Ness monster. I'll be right back. What is everyone thinking of the Loch Ness? Let me see if I can find that picture. Love it. Good, 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 good. Loch Ness. Hey, Nana Sherry. Okay, so just a couple things to talk over. One, hey, Wolves Whisper. We have a special guest tomorrow night. The Louisiana Paranormal Team, I think. They are going to be in the house. It is going to be a lot of fun. So this is the picture. And tell me what you think. So what do you think? Do you think it's a floating log? Part of a ship? Or do you think there was really a Nessie? Right, Shirley? Looks like a long arm coming out of the water. Let me see. Some of these pictures are so grainy. Here is another one. Witnesses said that they saw this in 1938. And then, oh, that's fake. Look at this one. That's definitely fake. Hey, drink and be Rosie. Magic says it's very possible. I'm just telling you, if that thing is in the water, I'm not going near it. Oh, this one of little Nessie is super cute. We all know that's AI. That's true, Magic. It's kind of cute. I would walk up and say, would you like a treat? But that is the one that Hugh guy took that Sunday morning. So, oh, you think it's a dino? Wasn't he magic? He was so cute. I want a stuffed animal of him. That was back in 1933. I'm not a very good camera girl, am I? I've got my camera all over the place. Supposedly, that's what they say. Oh, arg. I love that. That was great. Who's ready to get back into the rest of the Loch Ness monster? Hey, Susie Q. Oh, yeah. Hello, Sabrina. How are you? Amber Dowdy. It does, Shirley. It does look like a shadow above the water. Hey, Turtle Woman. Louisiana Spirits, that's it. Yes, looking forward to it. I think it's going to be like 2 or 3 that will be coming up in the box. So it should be very fun. Have your questions ready. I'm just loving seeing all the theories. Hey, Jazz, how are you? Oh, I love carrots and dip. I'm craving some chicken noodle soup. I don't know why. Hello, Rakim. Oh, yeah. Apparently so. Hey, Tigger. Yeah, I had no idea that it was that far back in history. Ah, Snickers! And I saw someone else talking about some good food in there, so I just kind of skipped on past it. Shirley, you had to mention chocolate. And then you had to go and compound it and mention ice cream right behind that. Oh. All right, y'all are gonna have to start sending me some of your good food that you cook. 535 AD, 1500 years ago. Which we absolutely do know for a fact that dinos roamed the earth, you know, due to the fossils that we found. So, with that being said, let's go into chapter 6. Oh, me too. Fred Flintstone. Exactly. My scary story lovers, please follow me on Whispers in the Dark. There is a underscore between each word. So if you will please go in there and follow. I want a real following of scary story lovers, and I want my family there. So thank you so, so much. Chapter 6. The Surgeon's Revenge. The most convincing lies are born from the deepest humiliations. Marmaduke Wetherell returned to London in disgrace. The great monster hunter had been exposed as either incompetent or fraudulent, and the ridicule from the press was merciless, as you can imagine. Headlines mocked him. Monster Hunter finds umbrella at stand. Editorial cartoons depicted him as a bumbling fool, fooled by household furniture. His reputation as a serious big game hunter, built over decades of legitimate expeditions, was completely in shambles. But Weatherall was not just embarrassed. He was furious. And in his fury, he began to plan something that would make fools of everyone who had laughed at him. They're all gonna laugh at you. In the words of Carrie's mother on the movie Carrie. In the winter of 1933-34, Weatherall retreated to his home and began working on his masterpiece of deception. If the world wanted a Loch Ness monster, he would give them one. But this time, it would be on his own terms. Thank you. He enlisted the help of his son, Ian, a sculptor and a model maker, and his stepson, Christian Sperling, who had experience with special effects for film studios. Together, they began to construct what would be the most famous fake monster in history. The plan was ingenious in its simplicity. They purchased a toy submarine from Woolworth's department store, a small wind-up model that could actually submerge and surface on command. To this submarine, they attached a carefully crafted head and neck made of wood, putty, and plastic. Shaped it to look exactly what people expected a prehistoric marine reptile to look like. The model was only about 2 feet long, but photographed from the right angle, at the right distance, with the right lighting, it could appear to be enormous. But Weatherall faced a problem. He was too well known now. too associated with the previous hoax. If he claimed to have photographed the monster himself, nobody would believe him. He needed someone with unquestionable credibility, someone whose word would never be doubted, someone whose professional reputation would lend instant authenticity to whatever evidence he presented. He needed a doctor. Enter Robert Kenneth Wilson, a respected gynecologist from London, a man of science whose medical training and social standing made him the perfect front for Wetherell's elaborate revenge. Wilson was also, according to those who knew him, something of a practical joker who enjoyed elaborate hoaxes and had a very mischievous sense of humor. When Wetherell approached him with the plan, Wilson agreed to participate. On the morning of April the 19th, 1934, Wilson traveled to Loch Ness with Wetherell's model. They found a secluded spot along the shore, launched their tiny submarine with its attached monster head, and began photographing it from various angles. The key to the hoax's success was all in the framing. By photographing the model close to shore and cropping the images carefully, they created the illusion that the creature was much larger and much further away than it actually was. The water ripples around the model looked like the wake of something massive moving through the loch. The head and neck, perfectly proportioned for their tiny scale, appeared to belong to a creature of enormous size when seen without proper reference points. Wilson returned to London with what would become the most famous cryptozoological photograph in history. But when he submitted it to the Daily Mail, he insisted on anonymity. "I don't want my name associated with this," he reportedly told the newspaper. "I'm a respected physician. Just call me the surgeon." And so the surgeon's photograph was born. On April the 21st, 1934, the Daily Mail published Wilson's image with the headline, "Monster of Loch Ness, Surgeon's Photograph." The reaction was immediate and worldwide. Here was sheer, clear, photographic evidence of the creature's existence, taken by a medical professional whose credibility was beyond question. The image showed the monster's head and long neck emerging from calm water, exactly matching the descriptions from earlier sightings. The photograph seemed to answer every skeptic's challenge. It wasn't grainy or unclear like Hugh Gray's image. It wasn't based on footprints that could be faked. It was a clean, professional photograph taken by a man of science who had no reason to lie. The image launched 1,000 expeditions to Loch Ness. Scientists, journalists, monster hunters, and tourists flocked to the Scottish Highlands, all hoping to catch a glimpse of what the surgeon had captured on film. Books were written about the creature. Documentaries were filmed. The tiny Highland village of Drumnogit became a boom town as monsters fever swept the world. And through it all, Marmaduke Wetherell watched from the shadows, savoring his perfect revenge. The same newspaper that had humiliated him was now proclaiming the reality of the very monster they had dismissed him for failing to find. The same experts who had mocked his hippo footprints were now studying his photograph and declaring it genuine evidence of an unknown species. The same public that had laughed at him was now completely convinced by his elaborate deception. For 60 years, the surgeon's photograph remained the gold standard of monster evidence. It appeared in textbooks, documentaries, and scientific papers. It convinced skeptics and gave believers the proof they had been seeking. But Marmaduke Weatherall had created something more powerful than he had imagined. He hadn't just fooled the world. He had given birth to a modern myth that would outlive him by generations. And in the deep waters of Loch Ness, something that might have been the real creature continued to watch and wait, perhaps amused by the attention being paid to a toy submarine, while the true monster remained hidden in the darkness below. The surgeon's photograph was revenge. 60 years of perfect deception. A toy submarine from Woolworths fooled the entire world. Incredible. The Monster Hunter's humiliation created the most famous monster photo ever. But while the world was obsessing over a fake photograph, real sightings continued to pour in from people who had encountered something far more terrifying than any toy submarine. Chapter 7. The Real Witnesses. While hoaxers played games with toy submarines, something genuine was still lurking in the depths. The success of the surgeon's photograph had an unexpected consequence. It opened the floodgates for people who had been keeping their own encounters secret, afraid to speak up for fear of ridicule. Throughout the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, a steady stream of witnesses came forward with their own stories. Unlike the photographers seeking fame or the monster hunters seeking glory, these were local people who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking publicly about their experiences. People like the gamekeeper, who in 1916 reported seeing a huge animal surfacing by his boat long before the monster became a media sensation. His account was filed away and forgotten until the 1933 wave of publicity made such reports suddenly seem relevant. Or perhaps consider the hotel manager from Drumnadricket, who in 1933 reported seeing a beast resembling a whale in the Loch. This was a man whose livelihood depended on maintaining a respectable reputation in a small Highland community. Why would he risk his reputation for a hoax? These weren't attention seekers or publicity hounds. These were people who had seen something that challenged their understanding of the natural world. And they were reluctantly coming forward to add their voices to a growing chorus of testimony. But perhaps the most compelling account came from the couple driving along the south shore of Loch Ness in late 1933. George and Helen Spicer were returning from their honeymoon when they encountered something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. As they drove along the Loch Road, something enormous crossed directly in front of their car. Not in the water, on the road itself. According to George Spicer's detailed account published in the Inverness Courier on August the 4th, 1933, the creature was the most extraordinary form of animal he had ever seen, he said. It had a long neck, about 4 feet in length, and a body he estimated at 25 feet long. But here's what made his account truly terrifying. He described the creature as moving across the road with a sort of looping movement and disappearing into the loch with what he could only describe as an awful expression on its face. Think about what that implies. This wasn't just a large animal accidentally encountered by humans. This was a creature with intelligence, with expression, with what seemed to be awareness of the humans observing it. And it wasn't confined to the water. It could emerge onto land, cross roads, move through terrain that no known aquatic animal should be able to navigate. The Spicer's account was followed by similar reports of the creature on land. A motorcyclist claimed to have nearly collided with a prehistoric marine creature with 4 large fins and a long neck as it crossed the road near the loch. Local residents reported finding enormous tracks in the mud along the shoreline. Not the fake hippo prints that had embarrassed Marmaduke Wetherell, but genuine impressions that suggested something massive was regularly emerging from the water to move along the shore. But it wasn't just casual observers who were having encounters. In 1954, the crew of a fishing vessel reported that their sonar equipment had detected a large object moving beneath the boat, keeping pace with them for several minutes before disappearing into the depths. This was years before sonar hoaxes were technologically feasible. The crew had no reason to fabricate such a report. They were fishermen, not monster hunters, and sonar contacts that couldn't be explained were more likely to be reported to maritime authorities than to newspapers. Then came the Dinsdale film. In 1960, Tim Dinsdale, an aeronautical engineer with no previous interest in monster hunting, brought a 16mm camera to Loch Ness, hoping to settle the question once and for all. Dinsdale was a skeptic who wanted to debunk the sightings using scientific methodology. Instead, he captured 4 minutes of film showing what appeared to be a large object moving across the surface of the loch, leaving a wake that suggested something substantial moving underwater. The Royal Air Force's Joint Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Center analyzed Dinsdale's film and concluded that it showed an animate object of considerable size, moving through the water. Their technical analysis ruled out boats, logs, or other conventional explanations. This wasn't some grainy photograph that could be dismissed as wishful thinking as the others were. This was motion picture footage analyzed by military intelligence experts, showing something that couldn't be easily explained away. And the sightings continued into the modern era. In 1975, respected naturalist Sir Peter Scott, a man whose scientific credentials were impeccable, announced that he believed the Loch Ness Monster was a real creature, possibly a surviving plesiosaur. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Scott didn't base his conclusion on blurry photographs or tourist testimonies. He based on sonar readings, underwater photography, and eyewitness accounts from trained observers whose professional reputations depended on accurate reporting. By the 1970s, the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register had recorded hundreds of encounters from people all over the world. Doctors, teachers, police officers, military personnel, people whose careers could be damaged by association with monster nonsense if their reports weren't genuine. What were all these people seeing? Mass hallucinations seemed unlikely. Coordinated hoaxing was virtually impossible given the span of decades and the diversity of witnesses. But perhaps the most chilling accounts came from the local residents, the people who lived and worked around Loch Ness year-round, who knew the loch's moods and patterns better than any tourist or visiting scientist. They spoke quietly among themselves about encounters that never made it into the official registers. Fishermen who had seen shapes moving beneath their boats that were far too large to be known as fish. Children who had been warned away from certain stretches of shoreline because something had been seen emerging from the water there. These weren't stories told for entertainment or profit. These were warnings passed down through generations of Highland families who understood that some legends exist because they serve as survival instructions. Stay away from the deep water at night, the parents would warn them. Don't swim alone in the isolated coves. If you see something large moving beneath the surface, get out of the water immediately. The monster might have become a tourist attraction and a subject for scientific debate, but for the people who live with Loch Ness every day, it remained what it always been since the time of St. Columba, a very real reason to be afraid. Local people with nothing to gain were risking their reputations to report encounters. The creature was crossing roads, not just in the water anymore. Royal Air Force analyzed the Densdale film and said that it showed an animate object of considerable size. But as the 20th century progressed, science was developing new ways to peer into the dark depths of Loch Ness. And what they found there would either solve the mystery forever or make it even more terrifying. Chapter 8, The Scientific Hunt. Sometimes the more we learn, the deeper the mystery becomes. By the 1970s, the Loch Ness Monster had attracted the attention of serious scientists who brought sophisticated equipment and rigorous methodology to the Highland shores. This wasn't monster hunting anymore. It was cryptozoology, the scientific study of unknown species, and the team that arrived at Loch Ness in 1972 was equipped with technology that would have seemed like magic to the witnesses of earlier decades. The Academy of Applied Science, led by Dr. Robert Rines from MIT, deployed underwater cameras, sonar arrays, and strobe lighting systems throughout the loch. If something large and unknown was living in these waters, their equipment would find it. What they discovered was that Loch Ness was even more mysterious than anyone had ever imagined. The loch wasn't just deep, it was impossibly complex. Underwater caverns extended far back into the surrounding mountains. Temperature layers created optical illusions that could make objects appear much larger or smaller than they actually were. And the water itself was so dark, with suspended peat particles, that visibility beyond a few feet was virtually impossible. But on August the 8th, 1972, Dr. Rines' underwater cameras captured something that changed everything. At a depth of 55 feet, in the murky waters near Urquhart Bay, the cameras photographed what appeared to be a large, diamond-shaped fin or flipper attached to something massive moving through the water. The photograph was analyzed by experts from NASA, the Smithsonian Institution, and leading universities around the world. The consensus was disturbing. The image showed what appeared to be part of a large animate creature unlike any known species. But that was just the beginning. In 1975, Ryan's team captured an even more remarkable image. What appeared to be the head and neck of a long-necked aquatic creature photographed from below as it moved through the depths of the loch. The photographs showed details that were impossible to fake with 1970s technology. Skin texture, body proportions, and anatomical features that suggested a living creature of enormous size. The scientific establishment was forced to take notice. Sir Peter Scott, one of Britain's most respected naturalists, examined the evidence and declared his belief that the creature was indeed real. He even proposed a scientific name for it: Nessiterus rhombopteryx, the Ness monster with diamond-shaped fin. The Smithsonian Institution began preliminary discussions about mounting a full-scale expedition to capture or study the creature. The British government quietly began considering what legal protections might be needed if an unknown species was confirmed to exist in Loch Ness. But as the scientific evidence mounted, so did the sophistication of the skeptical response. Critics pointed out that underwater photography in the murky depths of Loch Ness was notoriously difficult to interpret. They suggested that logs, debris, or optical illusions could account for the images. More troubling for believers was the revelation that some of the evidence was deliberately fabricated. The famous flipper photograph was found to have been digitally enhanced to make ambiguous shapes appear more creature-like. The credibility of the scientific hunt was further damaged when it was revealed that researchers had been selectively presenting their data, highlighting images that supported the monster hypotheses while downplaying sonar contacts and photographs that showed more mundane explanations. But even as human-generated evidence was being debunked, the Loch itself continued to yield puzzling data. Sonar sweeps of the Loch revealed what researchers called anomalous contacts, large objects moving through the water at depths and speeds that couldn't be explained by known fish species or geological phenomena. In 1987, Operation Deep Scan, the most comprehensive sonar survey ever conducted on Loch Ness, detected 3 explained contacts. The objects were too large to be fish, too mobile to be debris, and too deep to be surface phenomena. The most recent scientific expedition, conducted between 2018 and 2019, used environmental DNA sampling to identify every living organism in Loch Ness based on genetic material dissolved in the water. The results were both reassuring and deeply unsettling. The DNA survey confirmed that there were no plesiosaurs, no surviving dinosaurs, no unknown species of large reptile living in the loch. But it also revealed the presence of an unusually large population of European eels, creatures that could grow to substantial size and that displayed behaviors that might account for some monster sightings. Here's what makes the eel theory particularly chilling. European eels are known to live for over 100 years. They can grow to lengths of 6 feet or more. And in the deep, food-rich environment of Loch Ness, they could potentially reach sizes unknown anywhere else in the world. Imagine encountering a 20-foot eel, thick as a tree trunk, with the intelligence of a creature that had been living and learning in the same body of water for over a century. But even the eel hypothesis doesn't account for all the witness testimony. Eels don't have long necks. They don't emerge onto land to cross roads. They don't display the kind of curious, intelligent behavior described by so many observers. And there's one more piece of evidence that no scientific expedition has been able to explain away: the consistency of witness descriptions across multiple centuries for over 1,400 years. From St. Columba in 565 AD to modern tourists with smartphone cameras, people describe essentially the same creature: long-necked, intelligent, massive, capable of both aquatic and terrestrial movement. The details are too consistent across too many centuries to be explained by collective delusion or cultural contamination. Something in Loch Ness has been interacting with humans for over 1,400 years. The only question is whether that something is a species unknown to science or something else entirely. NASA and the Smithsonian analyzed the evidence. This got real scientific attention. DNA survey found no plesiosaurs, but massive eels that could live over 100 years. 1,400 years of consistent descriptions. My night dwellers, that's not mass hallucination. But the strangest part of the Loch Ness story isn't what people have seen. It's what the creature seems to know about the people watching it. Chapter 9, The Intelligence in the Deep. The most terrifying monsters are the ones that are aware they're being hunted. In all the decades of monster hunting, scientific expeditions, and tourist photography, one aspect of the Loch Ness phenomenon has remained consistently unsettling: the creature's apparent awareness of human observation. This isn't the behavior of a simple animal going about its daily business. This is something that seems to understand when it's being watched, when it's being photographed, when it's being hunted. Consider the pattern of sightings over the decades. This creature tends to appear when witnesses are alone, or in small groups, away from large crowds or obvious scientific equipment. It shows itself just long enough to be seen clearly, then vanishes before detailed documentation is possible. This could be coincidence, but the consistency is remarkable. Time after time, witnesses report the same experience. They see something extraordinary. They fumble for cameras or binoculars, and by the time they're ready to record the evidence, the creature's disappeared. It's gone. Even more unsettling are the accounts of direct interaction between the creature and human observers. In 1933, a local man named Hugh MacDonald reported an encounter that has never been adequately explained. MacDonald was fishing alone from a small boat near Urquhart Castle when something large surfaced nearby. Instead of fleeing or showing aggression, the creature appeared to study him, rising partially out of the water to get a better look at this human intruder. For several minutes, according to MacDonald's account, man and creature observed each other, perhaps 30 feet of dark water. The creature's eyes, he reported, showed unmistakable intelligence, not the blank stare of a fish or the instinct-driven focus of a predator, but something that looked disturbingly like curiosity. Then, as if satisfied with its observation, the creature sank silently back beneath the surface, leaving MacDonald alone with the certainty that he had just been evaluated by something far more intelligent than any ordinary lake monster. Similar accounts of apparent recognition and intelligence appear throughout the monster's history. Witnesses describe encounters where the creature seems to deliberately position itself to be seen, as if it wants human attention, but on its own terms. In 1960, a group of tourists reported watching the creature surface repeatedly in the same general area over the course of an hour, each appearance lasting just long enough to be clearly observed before it submerged again. This wasn't feeding behavior or territorial display. This was performance. This creature was putting on a show, controlling the encounter from beginning to end. But perhaps the most chilling evidence of the creature's intelligence comes from the testimony of local residents who work on or around the loch regularly. Fishermen speak quietly about encounters where the creature has approached their boats from below, rising just close enough to the surface to rock the vessel slightly, a clear message that it's aware of their presence and could easily overturn them if it chose to do so. But it doesn't attack. It doesn't show aggression. It simply makes its presence known and then withdraws into the depths. This is the behavior of a creature that understands the concept of warning, that grasps the idea of establishing dominance without violence, that possesses what can only be described as a sense of restraint. Even more disturbing are the accounts of the creature's apparent ability to avoid modern detection methods. As sonar technology became more sophisticated, sightings became more rare and elusive. It's as if the creature learned to recognize the sound signatures of scientific equipment and adapted its behavior accordingly. Dr. Robert Rines, the MIT scientist who spent decades studying the Loch, noted this pattern with growing unease. His team's most successful encounters occurred when they used passive observation methods, underwater cameras triggered by motion, rather than active sonar sweeps. But over time, even these passive methods seemed to become less effective, as if the creature were learning to recognize and avoid all forms of human surveillance. This suggests not just intelligence, but the ability to learn and adapt, hallmarks of a very sophisticated mind. The creature's apparent longevity adds another layer to its mystery. If the same entity has been interacting with humans since St. Columba's time, then it has been observing and learning about human behavior for over 1,400 years. Think about what that means. This creature has watched the rise and fall of kingdoms, the development of technology, the evolution of human society from medieval clans to modern tourists with digital cameras. It has seen humans change from scattered Pictish tribes who carved warnings about water beasts into stone, to Victorian monster hunters with crude cameras, to modern scientists with sophisticated sonar equipment. And through all of that, it has survived by staying one step ahead of human attempts to capture or classify it. This raises a disturbing question. What else might the creature know that we don't? If it has been watching human activity around Loch Ness for centuries, if it possesses the intelligence to avoid detection by increasingly sophisticated technology, then what understanding might it have developed about human nature, human weaknesses, human fears? The traditional view of the Loch Ness monster is of a creature trying to hide from humanity, a relic species clinging to existence in the deep waters of a remote Scottish loch. But what if the reverse is true? What if humanity is the one being studied, observed, and evaluated by something far older and more intelligent than we've ever imagined? What if the real question isn't whether the monster exists, but whether it has been deciding all along whether humanity deserves to know that it does? The creature shows itself just long enough to be seen, then vanishes. That's not coincidence. It's been watching and learning about humans for 1,400 years. What does it know about us? What if we're the ones being studied? Drop an eye if this thought terrifies you. And that brings us to today. The age of smartphones and social media and satellite imagery. Has the digital age finally solved the mystery of Loch Ness? Or has it revealed something even more mysterious? Chapter 10, The Digital Age Mystery. In an age where everything is recorded, some secrets have learned to hide in plain sight. We live in the most documented era in human history. Every day, millions of people carry high-definition cameras in their pockets. Satellite imagery can spot objects the size of automobiles from space. Social media ensures that unusual sightings spread around the world within minutes. If the Loch Ness monster were real, surely the digital age would have provided definite proof by now, right? And yet, the mystery has only developed and deepened. In 2023, 90 years after the first modern sightings began, the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register recorded its 1,155th encounter. Not hundreds, over 1,000. Despite decades of technological advancement, despite millions of tourists with cameras, despite constant surveillance of the loch by webcams and monitoring equipment, people are still seeing something in those dark waters. Something that continues to defy explanation. But the nature of the sightings has evolved with technology. Modern witnesses don't just describe glimpses of humps and necks breaking the surface. They report sonar contacts on fish finders, infrared signatures of thermal cameras, and motion-triggered photographs that show something moving through the water at night when no tourist is present. In 2019, a tourist named Karen Scott captured what she believed to be video footage of the creature using her smartphone. The recording showed a dark shape moving through the water with a wake pattern that seemed inconsistent with any known boat or debris. But here's what makes the digital age sightings particularly unsettling. The creature seems to have adapted to the new technology, just as it has adapted to sonar and underwater cameras in previous decades. Modern sightings are frustratingly brief, often occurring just at the edge of camera range or in lighting conditions that make clear documentation impossible. It's as if the creature has learned to exploit the limitations of digital technology, appearing in conditions where smartphone cameras struggle with focus, distance, or contrast. The most intriguing modern development has been the use of environmental DNA sampling, the technique that identified the unusually large eel population in Loch Ness. But even this cutting-edge science has raised more questions than it answered. The eDNA surveys confirmed that something is disturbing the sediment in the deepest parts of the loch on a regular basis. Something large enough to stir up genetic material from organisms that normally live on the loch bottom. The pattern of disturbance doesn't match any known fish species or geological process. It's too regular to be random, too large to be caused by the eels that were detected, and too deep to be explained by surface phenomena. Something is actively moving through the deepest parts of Loch Ness. Something that leaves a genetic signature in the water but doesn't show itself in the DNA sampling. This is perhaps the most chilling possibility of all, that the creature has learned to avoid leaving genetic evidence, that it understands enough about modern detection methods to stay one step ahead of the latest scientific techniques. The digital age has also revealed something unexpected about the global pattern of lake monster sightings. Loch Ness isn't alone. Similar creatures have been reported in deep lakes around the world. Lake Champlain in North America, Lake Okanagan in Canada, Lake Tianachi in China, Nehul Huapi in Argentina. The consistency of descriptions across different continents and cultures suggests either a worldwide network of unknown species or something else entirely. But Loch Ness remains unique because of the historical depth of its documentation. No other lake monster has been continuously reported for over 1,400 years. No other creature has demonstrated the same apparent intelligence and adaptability. And no other lake has remained its secret and maintained it so successfully in the face of such extensive scientific scrutiny. Today, as you visit Loch Ness and see the tourists lined up along the shores with their cameras and binoculars, all hoping to catch a glimpse of something extraordinary, the loch looks peaceful, almost domesticated, with tour boats and gift shops and visitor centers. It's hard to imagine that these calm waters could hide anything more mysterious than unusually large fish. But then the sun sets, and the tour boats return to shore, and the crowds disperse back to their hotels. And in the growing darkness, the loch transforms back into what it has always been. 22 miles of black water, 800 feet deep, holding secrets that predate human civilization. The question that has haunted investigators for nearly a century remains unanswered. What is living in the depths of the Loch Ness? Is it a surviving plesiosaur, a remnant from the age of dinosaurs that has somehow escaped extinction in the isolated waters of the Scottish Highlands? Is it a giant eel, grown to unprecedented size in the unique environment of the loch, exhibiting behaviors that no eel has ever displayed before? Or is it something else entirely? Something that has been watching humanity evolve and adapt for over a millennium. Something intelligent enough to stay hidden, while occasionally revealing itself to remind us that there are still mysteries in the world. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that we're asking the wrong question entirely. Perhaps the question isn't what the Loch Ness Monster is, but why it is chosen to reveal itself to us at all. After 1,400 years of encounters, after centuries of fear and fascination, after decades of scientific investigation and tourist attention, the creature continues to appear to selected witnesses under carefully controlled circumstances. It shows itself just enough to maintain our belief, just rarely enough to preserve its mystery. And perhaps that's exactly what it wants. The beast of Loch Ness remains what it has always been, a reminder that no matter how much we think we understand about the world, no matter how sophisticated our technology becomes, There are still dark waters that hold secrets we're not yet ready to learn. Some mysteries choose to stay mysterious, and some legends know that the most powerful place to exist is right at the edge of human understanding, close enough to be seen, too elusive to be caught, and intelligent enough to make sure it stays that way. The creature is still out there, somewhere in the depths, still watching, still learning, still deciding when and where and to whom it will next reveal itself. And the next time that you look out across any deep, dark body of water, remember this: something might be looking back. 1,155 sightings in the age of smartphones. The mystery only deepens. The creature seems to exploit the limitations of digital technology. It's learning. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. It's not what it is, but why it shows itself at all. Some legends choose to stay legendary, and maybe that's exactly what the Loch Ness wants. And that is the story of the Loch Ness Monster. Well, I hope you have enjoyed your story time. I have. My stories burrow deep, where they cannot flee. And in the darkest corridors of your nightmares, you belong to me. You do? Pleasant dreams.